Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, your personal, professional, and career development podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz, and along with me, as always, as my esteemed colleague, my brother from another mother, Dr. Joe Hamlett. How are you doing today, Dr. Joe?
I'm doing good, Dr. Dave. I'm glad we did limit you to one cup of coffee today.
I've only had 3 sips, so this is going to be a fun one. And for those of you who are new to the podcast, we want to thank you for joining. If you're viewing or listening, thank you for joining us again on this podcast. And if you're new to this podcast, I guess sit down, put your tray tables up to your full upright position, fasten your seatbelts, because hopefully this is going to be a fun ride for everyone today. As you notice, or may not, if you're watching, you've noticed. If you're listening, you may not have noticed. We do have a guest speaker, Johnny Lawrence. How are you doing this afternoon, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. I've been looking forward to this a
Uh,
lot, actually. Yeah, I had a brief chat before and did nothing but laugh. So hopefully we'll be able to add some value as well.
Hey, maybe this is going to turn into a comedy show. We don't know.
Oh, I'm not funny. It's not me that's funny.
Okay, so Johnny, why don't you tell everyone just a little bit about yourself before we get going for the subject today?
Well, as you say, my name's Johnny Lawrence. I'm better known these days as a self-development coach, and there are two reasons. One slightly comical, the other one is a good reason. The comical one, I think, is that there is a show on Netflix called Cobra Kai, and there's a chap on there named Johnny Lawrence who stole my name. And with the best will in the world, I cannot compete with Netflix's SEO, so I had to change my name, which doesn't feel very fair. But that's what happened. But the genuine reason is that I have dedicated the rest of my days to help as many people as I can with their self-development. And what that means is I want to help people go from where they are now to where they'd like to be in the future. And what that often means is a pretty significant roller coaster ride with your emotions.
Mm,
It does involve looking back at your past behaviors. It does, not through judgment, but through analysis, just so you can understand them, so you can understand some of the traits you have, some of the behaviors you have, some of the things that you've done in the past that haven't potentially worked out well for you, some of the things that have happened to you in the
mm,
past, and the meaning that you've applied to those things. But really, what I'm about is about getting you to a place where you draw the line in the sand and you ask yourself, what is next?
mm,
What am I going to do with the rest of my life? How do I want it to look? Who do I want to be in it? Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? All of these really important questions. And that's what I help people with. And I have a kind of unique perspective, I suppose, and that's one of education. I've educated myself in various different ways and able to make sure that I'm delivering the right help
mm,
in the right way in the safest practices. But really, what I think helps me the most, and I suppose this is my opinion, is my experiences. Because there are lots of things, as we know, science is super helpful. We couldn't get through life without it. But sometimes science doesn't correlate.
mm,
Sometimes there's people have certain experiences and the science doesn't know what to do next, you know?
Yeah.
And I've had a few experiences in my life. I was a witness to domestic violence as a child, and unfortunately, my father tortured me as a child, and so, same with my siblings and my mum. And
mm,
those experiences left a significant imprint on my life, for which I applied meaning, which wasn't really that helpful at the time. And I wrestled with my emotions, and I went on an emotional roller coaster of a ride with life, getting lots of things wrong, making lots of mistakes, and not really learning from them, if I'm honest, at the time. And the thing about mistakes, the thing about life is if you don't learn the first time, it will just up the ante until you do.
mm. Wow.
um, I learned to manage my emotions through, unfortunately, addiction. That was alcohol, which came into my life in my teens. And yeah, that was the kind of the catalyst for me for understanding that I had outsourced my emotional regulation to alcohol. Alcohol was a great vessel for I suppose regulating those emotions, but it's like the good friend that gives you a warm hug while taking your wallet out of your back pocket, you know. It does take away from you. So eventually I had to address that. So I use my experiences in life, good and bad, and I use my education to help people go from where they are now to where they want to be in the future. So that was a very long-winded answer. I'm very sorry.
No, that's
That's
great.
awesome. Yeah, that
That's
was
great.
great. Wow. We're definitely gonna scratch and dig on a little bit of a few of those subjects that came up, and there are a lot of good nuggets in there. So the topic for today's show is translating emotions. So, I mean, a great segue. So, Johnny touched on several pieces of his experience. So, Johnny, let's start off with you. Tell us a little bit more about translating emotions.
Yeah, I mean, emotions are the way that our soul communicates with us. It's the way it makes demands. Our emotions are never wrong, but sometimes we can put the wrong information in and get an unhelpful answer, a bit like a calculator. If you put the wrong numbers into a calculator, you'll get the wrong answer. You just need to know a little bit about what you're doing first, right?
Hmm.
But our emotions telling us what we need to do, what we don't need to do, how we feel about a situation, which is the information we need to take action. Emotions are messages. If we think of them more like information than demands, because sometimes people are led by their emotions, right? Or they feel they are. They have a significant emotion, perhaps it's anger, and they interpret that as I need to do violence, or I need to take an action, or I need to throw something, or I need to say something. And it's not always the case. And so what I teach people is they are, and I suppose I have to be careful where I say this. It's not that I teach people, is that I listen to people and I reflect back what I hear. I don't like to put myself in a position where I'm the expert of your life. I don't think that doesn't sound right to me. I think you are the person that knows absolutely everything about you, and you might not be translating the information in the helpful way. And you might have emotions such as anger that come up, and you might decide that that anger means you have to do this and that. But actually, my question in particularly in anger is, what's made you angry? And then we get underneath the anger and we get underneath the emotion and we try to identify what is this emotion telling us. And I think sometimes the hard thing is that there is nothing there is nothing more difficult in life to accept than the things that you don't want to be true. And I think that sometimes when we don't want something to be true and we need to move forward, we will make up a narrative, a story, something clever that we can accept so that we can move forward. The problem with that is it's not true.
Mm.
And it's not that you're a liar or that you're a bad person. It's just that something really hard for you has come up, something really, really difficult, that's come up and you don't want to pay attention to that. Maybe you're in a marriage and deep in your heart, it's not working out, but you don't want that to be true. So you ignore it. And then the problems get bigger and bigger and bigger until something happens where you have to pay attention. And then everyone's feeling sorry for themselves and getting angry and saying, you did this and you did that, when actually the signs were there very early. The emotions were there. You just wasn't listening. And I suppose that's what I'm getting at is that I help people translate how they really feel, not how they want to feel, not how they prefer to feel, not what they hope is true, how they really feel. Without the judgment, without the over analysis, the emotions are very pure, very straight to the point. They tell you how you feel, you know? So I don't know if that's been a very helpful explanation.
No, I think that was spot on. I mean, it does. We all experience it, and so that trying to hide those emotions, but you're right, they turn into this brick wall that you have to face at some time or another. Hopefully, face it sooner rather than later, because it could turn into, you touched on the angry, and people that continue to get angry. I mean, how far do they go with it? And
Mm.
that's the scary part of that emotion taking over, or you allowing it to create the narrative, and you continue to follow that. So that's very, very powerful that you help people identify those things. Like you said, most of us don't want to hear, don't want to see it. So as you were talking about that, I just imagine you becoming a therapist almost, because people are crying, people are sharing this with you in their own way, which could be very powerful as well. So that's what I immediately went to. People laying on the couch, people sharing those experiences with you to get them to that level, to that acceptance level, and then you can move on from there.
Yeah, and I picked up on similar to Joe, the anger piece, but I kind of flipped it and started thinking about it. to your point, Johnny, it's easy to say, "Oh, I know why I'm happy."
Mm.
It's easy to say, "I know why it's funny to me." Maybe my sense of humor is not the same as everyone else's sense of humor. I'm pretty sure it's not, but it's that's the easy part. The challenging part is the other piece, and if we take that into a professional environment or a workplace environment, that frustration that we're feeling, that we're rewriting that narrative to saying, oh, I just need to work harder, or I just need to do this. I need to please this boss or this manager or this person. And maybe it's not the pleasing. Maybe it's they're asking too much of you, and you're mad at yourself for giving away too much.
Mm.
Joe and I have experienced this in our career paths as having our doctorate degrees. That we're put into a position to do one thing, and then they find out that we're capable of doing other things, and all of a sudden those other things fall under that, oh, other duties, I'm doing air quotes, other duties as assigned. And it's like, that's not even remotely close to other duties assigned to this particular position. But sometimes we fall into that pitfall of wanting to accommodate them or
Mm.
to overgive, and that's where we have to draw some lines. And it's to your point, it's our decisions. We're writing that narrative saying, oh, this is going to get me further, this is going to make me look better, and all we're doing is just frustrating ourselves because we're giving away more than we should.
Yeah, I think in those moments specifically, we are swapping that short-term relief from that uncomfortable feeling of disappointing somebody else for a collection of future resentments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, you will say yes to that boss, and they will learn if I ask enough, then they'll do it. And
Mm-hmm.
then over time, you'll start to blame them for that, which is very natural. You'll start to go, oh my gosh, they're always asking me for this, always asking me for that. They don't respect me. And this is where the story starts. You start building up the story about what they're doing means.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start applying lots of stuff until we get angry. And anger then becomes a dominant emotion, and we try to process that. But I think I've joked with you before, like, have you ever tried to help somebody process anger? It's not much fun. I'm not sure it's that doable either. So it's a difficult emotion, and I think what I often see with anger specifically, there are lots of reasons people are angry, lots and lots of reasons, but more often than not, I feel like behind anger is often fear. And if you think about what fear is an emotion that's designed to keep you still, fight, flight, that sort of thing. Um, and if you don't want to fight and you don't want to, and you can't run because you're scared stiff or you're scared in some way, then anger feels like a very powerful emotion. It feels like a doing emotion. It feels empowering. It feels like you're in control again, but you're not. It's a very secular emotion. It's how do you process anger? What does that mean? What does that mean? How do you process it? How do you get away from it? Well, you get away from it by understanding what you're angry about and resolving or accepting it, right? Well, that's not what anger does. That's not what it does. It just wants to throw things, say things, and generally make things worse. Now, I'm not saying anger's not, it's a necessary emotion. It's an important emotion. Anger is our body's early alert system to let us know that a boundary is being crossed. And it's there to let us know, to give us the energy to put that boundary back in place. But it's there for that moment, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in that moment when your boss comes over knowing, and they do know that they're taking advantage, and they're waiting for you to either stand up for yourself and say no, or accept and do as they ask. And in that moment, that anger is supposed to say, give you the energy and the confidence to go, I'm afraid I can't do that. No, I can't. And it is uncomfortable because you have to look on their face and see their disappointment. And there's part of you saying, what if this means they don't ask me to do this again? And what if this works against me in the future? And all of those things are going on. But at the end of the day, that's what's happening in the short term. But in the long term, 6 months down the line, when you're really fed up with them because they've asked you once again to stay behind on a Friday and forget, and you start, they don't care about my family. They don't care that I want to go and do this. And you start making up all these stories. Um, Truth is, you don't know unless they've said it to you how they really feel. But it's such a powerful emotion, and it can be very destructive over long periods of time, I think. Well, I've seen it and I've experienced it. So yeah.
Wow. No, and I am a example of that, frustration because, you've allowed that to go, and it definitely does turn into that it's their fault, they don't care, and all those types of things. But as you said, we've allowed it to go on. It wasn't until I said, hey, this is my limit, and that changed the trajectory of how I felt and where we went in the future. So it is definitely helpful to, like you say, maybe painful, scary at first, but the moment you do it, and it's still some insecurities around it, but as you'll soon realize it was the right thing to do. And then now that's gone. Now, if there's other frustration, that's because of something else, but at least that one has been minimized or taken away. So
And
I
we
can
just have to
definitely attest to
learn.
that.
It's so difficult. And, we all make mistakes. We do. We all make mistakes. And I find that, with clients, they often, when they want to make a change, the one thing they focus on is looking for the hack. They're looking for the easy road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They want the well trodden track that they can walk down, and all the answers are there and given to them.
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh, what I want, the freedom I'm looking for, is on the other side of that fence. The other side of that hedgerow." And they walk up and down the hedgerows, metaphor, looking for a gap, looking for an entrance, looking for a gate. And I'm like, there isn't one. And they're like, well, how do I get to the other side? Well, you got to climb over the fence and the bush, but it's got thorns in. Yeah, yeah. It's got barbed wire in.
Yep.
I think someone set that section on fire. Yep. It's just like, well, I'm gonna get hurt going over. I don't want to get hurt. Okay, well then you can't go to the other side.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. Like, quite a lot of the lessons that stick with us have come through some form of discomfort,
Yeah.
and in a weird kind of way, in an uncomfortable kind of way. How uncomfortable that is up to you. It's up to you. Like, there's always early warning signs, and this is what I speak to before about ignoring those early warning signs. Oh no, I'm sure it's not this, I'm sure it's not that, instead of being more curious and direct and asking the right questions. And my job, as I see it, is to is some at some point in somebody's life, they've made a decision to start ignoring their emotions, to start ignoring those messages, to start misinterpreting those messages into what they might prefer them to be instead. And my job is to get them back in contact with that. I don't tell anybody anything. It's interesting. I'll notice a lot of things very early on and think, interesting, perhaps is this, perhaps is that, but I'm not the one, I'm not the expert of you. And then over time they say, hey, do you think it's maybe because I did this? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you think? And I'm trying to get them to to that conclusion themselves, because when they realize it themselves, then they can take the right actions because all the ingredients are there. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. You said a couple of things. I think one of the pieces that you mentioned is important. That's taking the control back. Instead of letting the situation or letting go of that control and making positive decisions, they're letting go of that because it's not comfortable. It's a position of power that they're letting go of their own power, their own choice for whatever reason. And the other part that really stuck with me that you just mentioned was that critical self-reflection that Joe and I talk about so often. You have to dig into some uncomfortable places to really figure out who you are, what you want to be, where you want to go, how you want to get there. And to your point, Johnny, there is no quick fix. There is no magic pill. It's not a red pill or a blue pill or a green pill. It's you have to put the work in to get the results. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen over a couple of days. This is a process. And Joe and I talk about this a lot when we talk about personal, professional, career development. We could give you the roadmap and tell you the route that we took to get from New York to California, but guarantee you're not going to take the exact same route because there's going to be roadblocks. There's going to be, to your point, those hedges with the thorns and the, burning barbed wire and razor wire. And, and then there's another hedge on the other side of that. That's even worse. Right. So you have to tunnel through that one. So, it is that part where we have to think about, well, if I'm not happy in my job or happy in my relationship, why am I not happy? Why am I not doing what I want to do? And what do I need to do about it? And it can be a really big thing to unstuck yourself. And I did say stuck, I didn't drop the F-bomb, folks.
Not yet.
Not yet.
A bit more coffee. No, you're right. One of the hardest things to do is to make a decision. But what people don't realize is not making a decision is still making a
Yep.
decision.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's still making a decision. It's just you're leaving it up to chance.
Yeah.
And the good thing about once you have made a decision about which direction you're going to take, and I spoke to you earlier about mountains, and I remember I was climbing up a mountain called Mount Toubkal in Morocco, and I got altitude sickness, and I was really, really unwell, and I was freaking out, and I was just kept thinking to myself, put one foot in front of the other, you'll get to the top, you'll be okay. But there was this massive part of me, this anxious part of me, was like, I don't know. This is not going so well. Everybody's gone, and it's just you and this guide, and it's like, what's going to happen? And then we got to this like ledge, and I was with this former SAS guy, and he said to me, Johnny, come on, man, we need to make a decision, up or down. And I was like, this is the right question. Up. And something happened in that moment. It was the first time I actually made the decision to go up. I decided. But what happened in that moment is I stopped believing that, yeah, we'd left at 2 in the morning. I was going to get to the top at 7 a.m. and watch the sun come up. All of that had gone away. I was just like, okay, I'm going to get to the top, but I don't know what it's going to look like. But I'd also accepted it was going to be hard. It was going to be hard. I wasn't hoping it was going to get better. I wasn't hoping that something was going to happen magically that was going to take all the pain away. I accepted the pain. And every step I took, one step, two step, I was stopping. And I was just like, it's okay. Just keep going. Just keep going. And there's some horrendous photos of me looking very, very unwell. But eventually I got to the top. And I think there's something to that. I learned something in that moment, the power of making a decision, the power of stop pretending that this thing that's going on in your life is not happening. Stop pretending that it's probably just going to work itself out. Stop pretending that someone's going to come along and wave a magic wand. Stop burying your head. Make a decision. Doesn't matter which one it is. Because here's something else I learned about mountains, and they're a great analogy for life. Mountains don't care if you're tired. They don't care if you're cold. They don't care if your feet hurt. They don't care if you get to the top. They don't care if you don't get to the top. They don't care. They do not change for you. They don't adapt for you. You have to adapt for them. And they don't care if you do or you don't. And that's kind of life,
Yeah.
like life is just gonna, bad things happen. Well, I'm gonna throw another one. Oh, you can't do that. Yes, I can. I'm life. I can do what I
Yeah.
like. So you kind of just have to swing with it, and you have to make decisions, and you can only really make the decisions that are best for you in the moment with the information you have. That's
Mm.
it. That's all you can do. And when that changes, you get to make another decision, but you have to make one. You can't just keep chancing it and hoping it goes away, because it won't. It'll just get progressively worse. It's just you won't know which part,
Mhm.
and it becomes very complicated. So anyway, sorry, little
No, it's-
subtle rant
No,
there.
that was great. I mean, it was again spot on. The idea that you gain all your power back when you make that decision. Uh, that's I think what a lot of people struggle with. They go on by chance, or let things happen to them. It's not until they say I'm going to do this, that they, their chest starts to puff up and they start to get taller because I
Mm.
made this decision, whether I make it or not. I made this decision. I own it at the end of the day, whatever the results are. And that right there is way more powerful. When I talk to people and I help them, make a decision, you see that immediately in them. You see that
Yeah,
it's almost like they turn into a different person because they
I think they
realize,
do.
yeah,
I do.
yeah, and because they realize I made this decision, I'm going to do this, and that starts that whole process of I'm going to get there. They made that decision. Now they're going to have to determine, how I get there. Kind of like Dave said with the critical self-reflection. That's what you're doing. You're saying, okay,
Mm.
this is where I am. This is where I want to go. When I make that decision, now I'm going to do everything I can to get there. And that's the power in owning that decision.
There's this process that I've identified over working with people and working with myself, because I continue to work on my own issues and the way that my life changes. And it's called the 4 stages of behavioral change. And it's the 4 things that I've seen that I think are worth focusing on and paying attention to. And the first one is awareness. Like, you
Yep.
don't really have a single chance of changing anything unless you're aware of it.
Yep.
You have to be aware of what's going on, what's really going on. And this is where we have to really sort of shuffle out the way some of the things that you don't like and will prefer not to be there or true. Okay, let's look at how things really are. Let's look at the truth of the matter, and let's become aware of all of the things that we like, don't like, and what we want to be different. What do we want? You know, what do we have to become aware of? So that's the first A, and then the next A is accountability. Where in here can I take accountability? And people get a bit frustrated by that. They're like, well, do you mean blame? It's like, no, I don't mean blame. I don't even mean responsibility. I mean, you're waiting for somebody to do something because you know that they should. Okay. Yep. You're absolutely right. They should, but they're not going to.
Mhm.
Right. Well, they should. Yep. I know. And we can play this game for as long as you like, but it's not going to change the fact that they're not going to do it. Could you do it? Yeah, I could, but it's not my job. I shouldn't do it. No, yeah, I know, but could you? Could you? So then you could benefit from that choice. Well, yeah, I could, but I wouldn't want to. Okay, cool. So you're going to do it, not wanting to. Great. So where can you empower yourself? Where can you take back accountability for something that you can do? That's fair. That's reasonable. Where can you do that in your life? The next one is acceptance. What are you hoping will change? What are you wishing was different? What are you doing all of those things around in order to just avoid the fact that you need to accept it and move on? Where don't you have any autonomy, any influence, any power? Where? Because you need to accept that. Oh, what do I do with that? Well, nothing, which is quite
Yeah.
hard because people like to do stuff. And I'm asking you just to forget about it and focus on the things that you can be accountable for. And then lastly, once you've worked out what you're aware of that needs to change, once you've taken accountability for the things that you can influence and you've accepted the things you can't, what are the actions you need to take? What do you need to do? You know, acceptance is not a doing word, but action is.
Mhm.
So let's do something, let's move forward. And at the beginning, there'll be a lot of anxiety. It'll be scary, there'll be a lot of fear. But that's when we just make the steps so small that, well, why wouldn't you do them? Because they're really small steps. They might just be make a phone call or send a text message or put something in your diary or buy a piece of stationery, whatever it is. But they're the four things I've seen that I think, and I think it's helpful because it's a kind of structure, but it's loose and it's very much giving you autonomy to include what it means. It's not me saying, right, this is what you need to be aware of, this is what you're accountable for, this is what you need to accept, and here's are the actions you need to do. You're making those decisions in your own time. So yeah, I found that to be helpful, and so have many clients actually. So
Wow,
that's good.
that is so powerful. I mean, and what an awesome tool. Um, we've got just a couple minutes left. I want to say what I heard, and that is, in addition to those, the tools that you provided, the four A's, that people don't really realize, they're not consciously aware that they're making thousands and thousands and thousands of decisions every day. And until they realize that, they're just going to be stay stuck because they're not understanding why things are going the way they are. It's because they're making decisions. They're either taking action or not taking action, or they're taking the wrong action or the right action. So, wow, that was awesome. Johnny, what do you want to leave our audience with today?
I think it's really important that you realize that you are the person that makes the decisions in your life, and that there are many areas of your life where you are giving away power. And I understand why. I'm empathetic for that. But as long as you continue to give that power away, you won't have autonomy of your life. There's a difference between emotions and our feelings. Our emotions are what's going on, the happiness, the disgust, the fear, the sadness, the anger, whatever, Um, and then there's the feelings, which is the expression of our emotions. We spend a lot of time concerning ourselves with the feelings instead of the emotions. The emotions are the message. They are telling you how you feel about a situation, which is like a moral compass for life. It's directing you, it's nudging you towards what you should do. You might not like it, that's different. So my message is that you always have autonomy more than you believe. It might not look beautiful or perfect, and it might not feel so good, and it might be uncomfortable. In most cases, it almost always is. But you do have control. And if you want to know what to do, consult yourself, consult your emotions. What are they telling you? Not your feelings, not your feelings, your emotions.
Mm.
You know, the way you're expressing your emotions is very different to what your emotions are. Once we get to your emotions, we have clarity. We know where we are, what we're feeling, and probably what we should do next. So I hope that's clear and wasn't too ranty, but yeah.
Joe, what are your thoughts? I mean, this is
Yeah, this was a lot of good information to take in, and defining emotions and feelings was definitely helpful, hopefully for people out there to recognize, like Johnny just said, your emotions are what you should be paying attention to. And then the other takeaway is the fact that you still define your own success. So I think that's one of the most important things. You can allow people, or inaction, we talked about that, you touched on that, but it, yeah, that's still making a decision as well. If you decide not to do anything, and to give your power away. So, you know, everything we talked about on all the podcasts we talk about is that we're hoping that you define your own success, that you take control of your life. And that's been said a couple of times too. So I just want to thank Johnny for coming on and sharing all of this information with us, because again, I definitely took something away from that, and I think it's going to help me as well. Because as we always talk about, we're still on our journeys too. So, again, thanks, Johnny, for being on the podcast. It was definitely a great conversation.
No, thank you very much. It's been a genuine privilege, and I too always learn. And every podcast I
Yeah.
go on, I'm on my own journey too, so I completely resonate. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Johnny, for joining us. What a great conversation. What a great journey you shared with us. You want to thank our viewers and listeners for listening in and watching this episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, a personal, professional, and career development podcast. If you want to reach out to Johnny, we will have his information in the description. He's great. He's fun to talk to. I mean, we were laughing offline right before the show. We were worried that we weren't going to be able to keep a straight face. So, yeah, thank you again. And until next time, we want you to keep on being your not so ordinary you.